Happy Tuesday. Thank you all for joining us. I know people might be trickling in, but Alexa and I are so excited to talk about matrescence at work and to have a masterclass on how to plan for and structure your maternity leave and the transition back and overall just embrace your new identity as a working mom. So I am Emily Guarnotta, and we have Alexa Starks here as well. And we're just gonna jump in and get started. I'm a psychologist and I'm a certified perinatal mental health provider. I am one of the co-founders of Phoenix Health. We're an online mental health practice that specifically works with families that are navigating everything from infertility to pregnancy, postpartum, pregnancy loss, and the early years of parenthood. I'm also a postpartum depression survivor myself, a mental health advocate, and I'm the mother of two wonderful daughters, ages 5 and 8, and I'm based in South Carolina. Alexa, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I love that you included that you're a mom, because I originally wasn't gonna include that, but I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna include that. But yeah, I'm Alexa Starks. I am the founder of Executive Moms and Motherhood magazine, and I spent about a year in corporate, decade in corporate, and then started my businesses to redesign systemic working motherhood and work to improve the systems that support working moms and make that a bigger change. I am a mom to two toddlers. My son is 3 and my daughter just turned 2, and both brought home pink eye. So that's why we got a freshy face today, because my eyes feel like burning fire. So I'm super excited to be here. Oh, and I love that you said survivor of postpartum depression. I had postpartum anxiety and rage and had never heard of it ever before I had it, and was just sitting there like, this is so confusing. What's going on? So I love being able to host this masterclass with you, Emily, because you don't know what you don't know, and getting more resources and information to working moms so that they can be prepared this time or the next time is so important. So super excited.
Yeah, agreed. And a lot of the work you do, correct, is speaking to leaders, managers, like really the people who we might be returning back to work with, right? So you kind of have like this
Yeah.
insider knowledge of that experience on the manager leader end.
Yeah. And so much, of your mom, like your experience as a mom going back to work, depends on your manager and how supportive or unsupportive they are. And we found that in our Future of Working Motherhood report, was that your manager can make or break your experience going back to work and as a working mom. And so that is something that we do, is manager training and providing those resources so that managers and leaders can better support the moms, because it is like a 360 holistic approach to supporting moms that we need to take, not just like, let me just help you, but it's like, let's fix the whole system to support us.
Yeah, 100%. I love that so much. So today we're going to focus on kind of 4 pillars. One being building a strong leave plan. So this is if you're currently expecting, you're planning your maternity parental leave, how do you create a plan that's really going to work for you? And also, I think it's important to have some flexibility built into that plan. We're going to talk about what that actually looks like when you return back to work, understanding your new identity as a new mom. The word matrescence is really big right now. So we're going to talk about what that looks and feels like. And then personally redefining what success, productivity mean to you. And of course, we'll have time for some questions and answers at the end. So to just start with a quick poll, we'd love to kind of hear what you're here for, where you're at in your journey. So when it comes to your maternity leave plan, how prepared do you feel right now? Do you have a solid plan in place? Have you started planning but still kind of have some gaps? Have you not started yet because it feels pretty overwhelming? I know that was me for a long time. Or are you already back and maybe perhaps wish that you had planned better?
I love this poll because with my first, I had no plan. Like I went on, no, I started labor spontaneously at 39 and 0. and I thought I would be late, like 41, 42.
Mhm.
And so I had like nothing built out with my first and was in active labor, putting together like a Google Doc for my team and like texting my boss, like I'm in labor. So the second time was a little bit better planned, but that first time was rough. So I love this question because
Overwhelming.
it was definitely like, this sucked the first time. How do I do it better the second time?
Yeah,
And
we learn from our experiences.
right. But think about like if you didn't have to learn from it being such a shitty experience the first time, and instead you were like, oh, I can plan this. I didn't even know you could plan a maternity leave before going through all this.
I can't unfortunately see the poll. Alexa, are you able to share? Are you able to see?
Yeah, I see a couple people saying D, that they're back, but they wish they'd
Okay.
planned better. And that's kind of common experience that I've seen also with other moms I've worked with, is that it's hard sometimes to know what you don't know. And in the moment, you're just thinking about birth, right? And planning your birth, and then you're not really thinking about the after. And so you get a lot of this scenario of D, of like, you wish you planned better. And hindsight's always 2020. And that was my experience too.
100%. Yeah.
Kristen, it sounds like you're trying to better prepare for baby number 2. I love that. This is perfect for you then. You are in the right place.
Awesome. So what is the reality of working motherhood today? The data tells us a story that we can no longer ignore. We know that 40% of working mothers left a role or their employer after having a baby because they felt like they didn't have the support that they needed or deserved in the workplace. 65% of moms who left their job did so within the first year that they were postpartum. This numbers, the 65% of working parents that reported experiencing burnout, is what really sticks out to me as a mental health professional, as a psychologist, is that more than half of working parents feel like they're in a state of burnout. And I mean, like when we really take a step back and talk about what burnout looks and feels like, that's a very serious thing. Burnout is this chronic state of exhaustion. It's physical, it's mental, it's, on all levels. And it puts you at risk for so many physical and mental health conditions. So the fact that 65% of parents report this is extremely concerning. And 75% did not feel emotionally ready to return to work after maternity leave, which is something I see very often in the work that I do when I work with postpartum moms, is that anxiety and that fear as that return to work date is approaching. And the closer we get, the more we see their anxiety and fear spiking. Some of this was taken, Alexa, from your Future of Working Motherhood study. I would love to hear more about that and what you found.
Yeah, I think, so much of it is, again, the support from your managers and the support in the workplace that make a difference, right? Like, can you easily pump when you're going back to work, or can you request flexibility or not? Do you feel pressured to be at 100% on day one going back to work? And a lot of this is lack of communication with your manager, not feeling confident in speaking up for yourself. But this is very common that we saw that working moms felt unsupported or were unsupported and left, and struggled with postpartum mental health issues and the burnout and not feeling emotionally ready. And so it's common, but I want to push back on this being like acceptable just because it's common. Like, we can have a better experience. We just have to know how to find that support and that resources. And that's why this exists, right? That's why the work we do exists. That's why this work masterclass exists, because we don't have to struggle just because it's common to do so. So yeah.
We know better, so we should do better.
Yeah.
So building a strong leave plan. So this is really for those that are maybe expecting or, planning on having a child soon, creating a leave plan, or maybe you've had, like we mentioned, a bad experience, difficult experience with your first child, and you're planning for a second and you want to be really proactive. So a couple of things you can do to kind of set the stage early in creating a strong leave plan and really building that foundation is defining your coverage map, like identifying every task, every project, every working relationship that'll need backup. Alexa, that's like what you were doing with the Google Doc when you were in active labor. You're
Yeah.
trying to like get an idea of what the picture looked like and documenting the processes before you have to go. Then setting those expectations early, really having honest conversations with your manager and team before you leave, being really clear. Like I always like to say, clear is kind. And then letting go of the idea of this perfect handoff. I think ideally we want to tie every loose end, but it's not, it doesn't always work out like that, right? Like sometimes there are loose ends that as much as we try to tie them, we can't. And we kind of personally have to grapple with that and accept that we're doing the best we can, but it might not be perfect.
Yeah.
Alexa, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and if there's anything that we're missing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I will say before I had my kids, I didn't even know that you could plan a maternity leave. And so I want to reassure that the earlier you can plan all of this, the better. Like, don't wait until you're already back at work to now start having these conversations, because you'll be postpartum, healing, recovering, dealing with emotional swings and, sleep deprivation and exhaustion and adjusting to a new baby and everything that happens postpartum. So set yourself up for success. Start having these conversations with your manager. I would say 2 months before you go on leave is a good average time. 3 months, great. A month kind of starts to push it, because then you don't know what happens if you go into labor early, and you need to maybe have some like subsequent meetings, like for handoffs or follow-up meetings with people. So the earlier you can plan, the better. And be open with creating a plan that gives for flexibility, because you also don't know how your birth and postpartum is going to go. You may end up needing a C-section when you planned a vaginal birth, right? And so now your recovery is more challenging. You may get postpartum depression, and it takes you out and is really hard, and you didn't expect that. And so you have a harder recovery and phase of postpartum and going back to work. So give yourself grace to adjust as needed. So, letting go of that perfect handoff, have your plan, but be able to let it flex. But talk to your manager with setting those expectations before you go on leave. So you can say, can I work remotely? For the first 3 months after maternity leave? Can I come back part-time or hybrid or work flexible hours or, things like that, so that you can have that transition plan to let you adjust, because it is so difficult to go back to work full-time while also being a mom full-time now. And especially if you're prepping for baby number 2, that transition from 1 to 2 is exhausting. It is a lot. Especially if you also have a young kid, a toddler. That was us. We did back-to-back kids. And it is hard having like a toddler who also needs you and a baby who needs you. And now you have a job that you have to be fully present at and working. So give yourself grace and start this planning process earlier than you would probably think.
How soon do you recommend starting to document your processes, like essentially kind of creating an SOP for the work that you do? Like, should that start, I mean, from the moment you find out you're pregnant, or what, like how do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, if you're pregnant, 3 months pregnant, great, start it, document those SOPs. As soon as you can, start doing it, because probably not gonna finish it, in a day. And there's always going to be work that comes up and meetings that come up. And, when I started doing it the second time, it took me a couple months to get everything documented and together and in one place, and have meetings with my team to go through them and go over them and make sure they knew everything as well. Because it's not just documenting the SOPs. It's also making sure everyone's trained on what the process is and what it looks like. So if you're 6 months pregnant, document it. If you're 3 months pregnant, document it. Like, you really can't over prepare for this. You're just setting yourself up for more success. Honestly, it's going to make your life easier coming back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also, one thing that comes up a lot when I'm working with folks in therapy who are preparing for leave is, hoping that things unfold in a certain way, want to go into labor at 39 weeks and then,
Yeah.
take my 12 weeks, come back. But life doesn't always happen like that. So having your team or communicating with your team so they understand like this is the plan, but there also has to be flexibility because I can't control all
Yeah.
the potential outcomes. How do you recommend talking about that? Because like you don't want to scare your team into thinking like I'm going to throw this plan out the window, but like you do have to be realistic because things can happen that could kind of deviate you from the expected timeline.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, prioritize yourself, because the better you can communicate this, the better you're taking care of yourself and your baby. But just be open with your team, and you're trying to help set them up for success too at the end of the day. And it's like, let me help me help you, right? And so if you're approaching this with like a collaborative nature, this is not meant to be a brick wall. This is meant to be something that moves and flows and flexes. Especially in business, things are always going to go sideways. There's always going to be like, oh, there's some change that happened. Oh, there's an org change while you're at, like, things will always flex, whether or not you want them to. And so having that open communication with your team so you can set them up for success and let them know, some women, for example, want to have updates or communication, while they're on maternity leave. They'll say like, oh yeah, text me, if it's an emergency, if you need something, right? For me, I was like incommunicado the first time. I was like, if you're dying, I don't even want to know about it. But the second time with my team, I was like, I'm not going to respond to Slack, but if something's urgent, text me and I can get back to you. It may take a couple days, but I'll get back to you.
Mhm.
And so that was always like a fallback of like, I want you to succeed, because you are my team, but things may have to flex, and that's okay. And so, and some women have, coverage for their job versus like passing it off and divvying up work to different team members or like pausing projects. So it's going to vary on what your situation is. But yeah, as open and honest and transparent communication as you can is going to make a big difference, even if it feels uncomfortable at first.
Yeah, don't engage in some of the patterns I fell into is people pleasing,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to make it everyone else comfortable, even though I knew I was
Yeah.
overcommitting. You really have to be clear on what you can offer. And then if things change, like if you had said that you wanted to be in communication and then suddenly that was driving your stress or anxiety, it's okay, to change your mind on that and
Yep.
communicate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do what's best for you at the end of the day.
Preparing to be absent is one of the most professional things you will ever do. I love that quote.
Yeah. That's a good one.
So here we kind of highlight two different ways to approach leaving. The one on the left is a very high pressure approach. This is when you're trying, like, again, to tie up all those loose ends before leaving, saying yes to everything. Maybe that's like where some of the people pleasing comes in, maybe avoiding talking about it because you want to seem committed, stressing over everything, and committing to returning earlier than maybe you feel comfortable with or like you should, or checking in constantly. And checking in the sense like it's driven by pressure, it's driven by stress. If you're someone like Alexa said that wants updates, that's can be totally okay and healthy. But if it feels like I need it because I'm afraid that I'm going to, be perceived as not committed or be overseen for promotion, like that's coming from a different place versus the clarity approach, which is where we have a clear plan. We have set boundaries. These boundaries have been communicated to our team. Our timeline is clear, again, with flexibility incorporated in there, trusting our team and respecting our leave as non-negotiable. My two maternity leaves were definitely the pressure approach. So I wish that we were having these conversations about how to approach it more from the clarity angle. Alexa, what do you see? Like, how do you move from, especially if, say, you had a pressure approach with first leave and now you're trying to do things differently. How do you do it differently? So it comes from more the clarity approach.
Yeah. Again, the planning ahead. So with my first, it's in labor, bouncing on my yoga ball, typing out email to my boss of here's where I'm at. With my second, I planned ahead, built out the SOPs, had meetings with my team, but I knew I wanted a better maternity leave. Like I knew I wanted to not be stressed. I knew I wanted to start my maternity leave at 38 weeks because I knew I'd, go early into labor at 39 weeks again. And I did. And it was great not being in labor and working at the same time. But you have to do the work, right? You have to put together the coverage plan. You have to talk to your boss, set up those meetings, talk about, the expectations of, I'd like to go back to work part-time or hybrid or remote. I'm going to be pumping, or I'd like to continue breastfeeding. Like talk about these things that you wouldn't think you'd have to talk about. And you have to be intentional about it. And most people don't they don't think to plan it, or it's something they put off long enough and then they kind of scramble at the end. So be very intentional about this, because you can have a better maternity leave and transition back to work. Don't just try to figure it out as you go, because it will be much harder to just figure it out when you're postpartum and trying to go back to work when you're exhausted at the same time.
This is one thing you have to be very proactive about. You can't, when you're reactive, it's what again leads to like this more high pressured approach.
Yeah. Think about it, like a birth plan, right? I had a birth plan. I put together a birth plan. I did hypno breathing. I wanted a natural birth. I practiced. I trained for it. I taught my husband to be my doula. I was like, you're going to do this and you're going to do the hip squeezes and you're going to do like, here's the pressure stuff. I'm like, so think about it like that. Like it's just part of your pregnancy and birth planning.
100%. Yeah. Love that. So what does it actually look like when you return to work? This gradual return framework where there's kind of these different phases. This is kind of a phased approach, right? Where there's a reentry, there's time for reorientation, and then it takes time to get back into that full rhythm. I feel like a lot of times in our culture, we just expect to be back in full rhythm like on day one, and that's not really realistic.
Yeah. And that's definitely part of the lack of communication with your manager, right? Like with my first, that was the assumption that I'm back on day one, you're back at 100%, right? Read your 10,000 emails and like, get back to work. And that sucked and that was brutal. And then the second time around, it was kind of similar. She didn't understand. I had postpartum anxiety and was struggling to communicate that I was struggling as well. So with this, I always recommend like a 30, 60, 90-day transition plan so that you can adjust if you are having a hard time, right? Because if you try to go back at 100% on day one and you are struggling, it's going to feel extremely overwhelming, right? It's going to be even harder to adjust. So that re-entry mode, like adjust, I want to take back one project or 30% of my work, right? Or I want to work remote for a bit, have those one-on-ones with your team, figure out what happened, where there are org changes, the projects, like where everything is at with your work, and go slow. Don't try to be at 100% on day one. Take, a month or a few weeks to adjust and then pick up a little bit more of your work and a little bit more and get back into the rhythm of, regular meetings and trying to fit pumping into your schedule. And how that's going to work for you. Give yourself time to adjust. Think of it as hiring a new person at your company, right? They have 30, 60, 90-day plans normally. You have like a 90-day window of like ramping back up. You wouldn't expect a new hire to be at 100% on the first day either. So don't put that same expectation on you, because you just went through a massive life transformation, arguably the biggest transformation you will ever go through in your entire life. And so give yourself time to adjust to now a full work job and motherhood and sleep deprivation and postpartum and healing and all of the things that come with it. So like reassess your workload, reassess how you're doing. And I always recommend have a check-in with your manager that's not task work related, just like a 15-minute, once a week check-in of like, how are you doing? Is there anything that your manager could take off your plate or do better to support you? Because often they don't know what they don't know, and they can't guess if you're struggling. They can't guess if you're having a hard time if you don't speak up. So this is so important for you to communicate as much as it is for them to hear what they can help with. And that can be really uncomfortable because we're not used to talking about emotions or struggling at work. That's kind of like taboo. And at the end of the day, it's going to help you tremendously to tell your boss if you're having a hard time, if you need to like delegate some work because it's overwhelming at the moment. Can you push back some projects to next week or next month? Can you delegate some work to someone else? Or maybe everything is going great and you want to take back more work and take on more projects, right? Everyone's going to be so different. So give yourself that flexibility to reassess where you're at in that workload.
Alexa, do you find that a lot of, and I know we can't generalize this to everybody, but that most managers and leaders are expecting us to return back to full rhythm on day one? Or are we putting that on ourselves?
It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of some managers who just don't understand because they're not moms or they're not parents. And so they don't know what you're going through. And it is a little bit on us because that's what's been done historically. And so that's become the norm of, oh, everyone else tries to jump back at 100% on day one. So I must do it too. That's become culture. And that doesn't have to be what you do. That doesn't have to be the norm. It needs to be what benefits you the most. And so being open about it is much more important than you burning out in a month and crying and exhausted and rage quitting because you just can't do it anymore. So it's a little bit of both. And that's why I say, like, your manager doesn't know if you're struggling, and you have to communicate that. And Kristen, I see your note about it's like taboo and seen as unprofessional to talk about struggles at work, especially if it seems that they're personal struggles and not related to the work. I just did a TED talk on this exact topic of like, we're all human. And at the end of the day, everybody will go through something in their life that requires compassion and a support from people, from your manager, from someone. And the more that you can be open and change the culture, it starts with you. It starts with the more that you can be open and say, today I'm having a hard day. I'm struggling with postpartum mental health issues. You're not going to get fired for that. There's literal legal protections for that. And so, sorry, my kids, they gave me a daycare cough. So it is taboo because we have to change the norm, right? Historically, women like shoved it down, right? Like they gave women in like the 50s amphetamines to be happier at home because, and just being the stay-at-home mom, they gave them ecstasy to be happier. And historically, we have pushed down and swallowed and absorbed all of our issues and not talked about it. And that's not okay. We can do better. And it starts with how you show up and how you show up and support everyone else. Because when you show up and start saying, I'm having a hard day, you make it safer for someone else to say it the next time too. I'll stop there and let you say something while I get a cough drop.
No worries. Yeah, it creates this ripple effect or opens the door for others. And I think it's just important to check in with yourself too. If you're feeling that pressure to jump back full rhythm, sometimes we're not even really clear on, is this actual pressure that I'm getting from a manager or leader? Is this personal pressure? Is it a little bit of both? And when we're in postpartum, the thick of it, it's hard to really pull those pieces apart. So I think that's really where like taking a step back and evaluating, what am I feeling? Where is this coming from? What's driving this? Can help you kind of then figure out, because those are if the pressure is coming from a leader versus it's personal pressure, those are two very different ways, courses of action that you need to take to address that. But the reality is that Alexa's saying that it's just impossible to go back full rhythm. And as much as we can want to be back to ourselves on day one, we do have to think of it like acclimating to a new job, and how there is this 90-day grace period that happens where you're relearning things and you're navigating pumping and just all the changes, sleep deprivation. Like we really have to give ourselves the time and the grace, and we have to manage our own expectations of ourselves, because if we're expecting ourselves to jump back at 100% on day one, more than likely our leaders are going to expect that too. We kind of have to be the ones to shift that expectation.
Yeah, exactly. Be the culture that you want to see. It starts somewhere. So why not start it with you?
100%. Yeah. Give off that energy.
Yep.
Because there really is a cost to going back too fast. I mean, I was shocked, not shocked and surprised, but just shocked and shocked that I found it on paper, that women who return to work before 12 weeks have an increased risk of postpartum depression and other perinatal mental health conditions. And I mean, honestly, what I see in the women we work with who are preparing to go back to work, as that day is approaching, there's so much anxiety and stress associated with going back. And the most common time period that we have people reach out to our therapy practice to start services is around 4 to 5 months postpartum. And when I start asking, talking to them and asking them questions, I can guarantee 90% of the time they reveal that they either recently went back or they're about to go back. And that experience of going back is playing a big part. And maybe they already had symptoms there, but it's exacerbating their symptoms. So what can we do differently? It starts with permission to return more gradually, to return imperfectly and on our own terms, and to evolve into this new version of ourselves, not expecting ourselves to be the same person that we were when we, left for our leave.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot, that motherhood is an evolution. It's an evolution, and you have to let yourself evolve and not try to bounce back, because you're never going to be the same person you were. You're not the same person.
Yeah.
Whether it's your first kid or your second kid or your third kid, there's differences, and you have different postpartums every time.
Yeah, I loved Ellen Pompeo. I don't know if I'm not pronouncing her last name correctly, on Call Her Daddy, when she talks about how becoming a mother changes the way you show up to work. And she's unapologetically says, you cannot be the same person when you come back. You cannot show up in the same way. You're not going to be as present. And I think just expecting ourselves to do that and taking on that pressure that maybe originally came externally that we've now put on ourselves internally is just setting ourselves up for failure. It doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. You're not going to give birth and expect to go to the gym again the second day, the day after you give birth. You're going to let yourself heal. You're going to let yourself recover. I was working out every day before I had a baby, and then, you have your baby and it's okay, well, now I got to take a couple weeks, couple months off of the gym. Right. So it's that you're giving yourself that adjustment period. Just continue that line of thought of adjusting, giving yourself time to adjust to this.
It's harder to do with the mental, I think, sometimes than the physical. So matrescence, that's why we're all here, right? This is the Matrescence Masterclass. Matrescence is a process of becoming a mother, a profound psychological, neurological, hormonal, social, developmental shift that occurs similar to adolescence, that reshapes who you are as a person, affects every area of your life, including how you show up at work. Alexa, how do you see matrescence tying into the workplace?
I see this a lot with, before you have a baby, your identity is tied up with your career, right? I am a advertising executive or leadership executive or manager, whatever. And it's tied to your job and what you do. And then after you have a baby, Now you have multiple identities, not just one. Maybe you still have that identity of corporate woman, but now you also mother. And that is a high priority identity, And so it's sometimes it's conflicting, which one's more important. Sometimes it's like, oh, I actually don't give a shit about my corporate job anymore and it's not important. And I actually really want to do something different or just be with my kids full time. And so that's this huge identity shift that we see. And Jennifer, I saw your comment about, trying to figure out who I am now. It takes time to find your new identity. Like I'm 2 years postpartum. My kids are 3 and 2, and it's evolved now differently than it was 6 months postpartum and, a year postpartum. And so matrescence, this shift and your, your ambition and identity shift, it takes a while. It's not just, oh, it's a few weeks and done. It's a long process of evolving into who you are. And so give yourself time to discover who you are and what you're passionate about now, and all of the depth and strength that you have now as a mom. And it's totally fine to still be a corporate woman, but now you have this new identity. And where does it fit in your life? And if you're trying to jump back into career woman and not recognize your new identity, that's where that tension starts to come into play, because you're trying to ignore this new identity when everything in your body is like, mother, I am a mother. And so don't try to push back and just jump back into who you are. Let yourself evolve forward. You can be career woman and a mother. So that's kind of where I see it a lot.
Yeah. And it's probably going to be messy as you're figuring it out.
Yep.
Like it can feel like an identity crisis, especially if you haven't heard this term before. I don't think I heard it until after I had my second child, probably 1 to 2 years after. And this term actually was coined in the 70s, which it's really interesting that, we're talking about it more now, but I feel like there was this like 3 decades where people weren't talking about it at all.
Yeah. And I think the hardest part of it is feeling like you're losing parts of yourself. And Hillary, I saw your comment about feeling lost again, and that's normal because you're now going through that process of who am I now? Who am I now as a career woman and mom, or as a mom of 2, or a mom of 3? And so you're questioning what's most important to me now? Where are my priorities? What are my values now? And you may be shedding parts of your old identity that don't fit who you are now. And that can feel like you're losing parts of yourself, but you're not really losing parts of yourself. You're shedding what doesn't fit you, or you're shedding freedoms that the version of you pre-baby had that you don't have now, right? Like maybe before you had a kid, you could go out all hours, go out with your husband, go out with your partner, go out, didn't matter. Now you're tied to your house, right? I couldn't leave because my daughter only wanted to be on me contact napping. I couldn't go to the gym for months because my daughter was breastfeeding every 45 minutes because it was just like little snacks. And so I couldn't get like a 3-hour stretch out of the house. And so I felt like I lost who I was because that old version of me wasn't fitting my new lifestyle. And so it's all about a season, right? It got better and my daughter slept longer stretches and I could go to the gym and leave the house without a baby attached to me. But this season that you're in may not fit the old season that you were in before you had a baby. And so give yourself patience and time to adjust and learn what season you're in now and learn about yourself. And it's hard.
It is hard. Yeah. I love everything that you said. And I think it's, if the highlight reel of seeing, because it is so messy, and sometimes we look at, social media, highlight reel, everyone looks like they have it all together. So if you're seeing that and that's driving more discomfort, to set boundaries around social media or other technology or whatever that might be making you feel bad that you're going through this transformation, because it's messy, it's hard, it's beautiful, like it's everything all at the same time. So we really need to like make space, give ourselves grace for it, and just lean into it versus, trying to, the more we resist it, the more it persists.
Yep.
So how can you get more clear on your identity as a mom, as a working mom? I think one of the big ways is to name what's actually happening, like naming the grief that you're feeling, naming the emotions that you're feeling. And it's okay to grieve who you were before, the parts of you that you're shedding, while honoring this person that you are becoming and rewriting that story. Like you're not losing yourself in motherhood, but it's changing, it's growing, it's expanding. Journaling, meditation, time in nature. If you can get time for exercise or some kind of movement, art, some creative pursuits can be really good ways to kind of lean into that experience. And then finding your village of people. We know that isolation and loneliness only kind of amplify identity confusion. So connecting with other people, moms, working moms, who have had this experience, are on this journey with you, have been on this journey before, and maybe are a little bit ahead of you, it can be so helpful to connect with folks like that.
Yeah, that's so important. We just talked about losing yourself. You're expanding. And that's a hard thing to experience because we haven't experienced that in a long time, since adolescence, since puberty. And so now we're adults and we thought we were solidified in our adulthood and who we were and who we are. And now this massive life change happens and we're like, whoa, I did not expect. You cannot predict how much you're going to change when you become a mom. And even subsequent babies, like I still went through this whole matrescence process when I had my second. I'm different now than after my first. And part of this is, this juggle that has to come with two kids is different than when I just had one. And so it is, give yourself that time and patience to figure this out. Kristen, I see you saying your son is 20 months and after all this time you still don't know who you are and what you want. That's normal. That's okay. That's totally normal. Everybody's on a different timeline. Could take some women years, sometimes it's months. Everybody's going to be so different, and don't try to rush the process. Look at what's most important to you now. And if you could imagine yourself in, 5 years from now, what would that maybe look like? And know that it's okay if everything changes next year or in 6 months from now. That's totally okay. Your timeline is going to be different than anyone else's timeline. And Elizabeth, I see your comment about that you shifted your career to focus on helping mothers. I love that. I had that same identity shift about wanting to switch careers to help other moms. And I know a lot of other women who did that and left corporate and was like, I want to build something that also helps other moms. And so I love that you also resonated with that. Hillary, you find it hard to work with, hard to find other working moms. It is hard. I found other moms we took our son to Gymboree and our daughter to Gymboree class. That was where I found them. It was like a lunchtime thing. And so there were some other working moms that took their kids to Gymboree and on the Saturday mornings one. And you kind of have to like be really intentionally extroverted, which is hard. Like I would just really have a cup of coffee beforehand and be like super amped up, like caffeine fueled, and be like, hey, your son is the same age as my son. Have you potty trained yet? Like, how's your sleep training going? Like, you have to be really intentionally extroverted, which is hard if you're tired and hard if you're introverted. But if you want to make friends with other working moms, you kind of have to really put yourself out there uncomfortably almost. I don't know, Emily, did you have to go through that?
Yeah, and that comes up a lot. And I find that moms generally want to make other mom friends too. So any fear that you have about putting yourself out there, I can
We're all
almost
feeling
guarantee
it.
that the person on the other end is going to receive it well, because we all want more deeper relationships with other people, right? So just
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, you just gotta pump yourself up, drink the coffee, and
Mhm.
get yourself out there.
Yeah, imagine if you're like a bunch of dudes right before a football game and you're like pumping yourself up, right? Like just take that, Hillary. You said you're an introvert. You gotta, yeah, hype yourself up. Be like, ooh, 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 chest bump, and like go
Yeah.
out there and do it. And it's uncomfortable at first, maybe the first few times. And now I'm like the loudest mom at the park. Like when we take our kids out to the park and I see another mom with a toddler, I'm like, beeline for you. I'm like, what's up? You want to have a play date? Because it's also really fun having play dates because your kids can play with each other and you can kind of sit back and let them play. And it's really, it's really nice to just like take a breather and you don't have to like as actively parent sometimes. But yeah, be the awkward person because I guarantee it works out. You're gonna be fine. We all want to be friends and make other mom friends, especially play dates if they got similar age kids.
And I constantly see people putting it out on Facebook groups and things too, where they'll just put out there, I want to
Yeah.
make more mom friends. My kid wants to have more play dates, make more friends. I think we're in a world where putting yourself out there is no longer weird or frowned down upon. Like we can just
Yeah.
do it.
Yep.
So another big piece of this journey is redefining what success and productivity mean for you. So your old definitions of success are going to evolve into this new definition. Whereas in the past, maybe you were, like Alexa said, your identity was tied into work. You were always available, responsive. You prided yourself on that. Your output was equal to your value. Asking for help was a sign of weakness, so you didn't do it. You were very independent, and you expect yourself to perform at the same level as you did pre-baby. This new definition is about boundaries. It's about impact over the number of hours that you logged, presence over performance. Asking for help is a part of this journey, being self-aware, and overall embracing the fact that success is going to look different now, and that's okay.
Yeah, and take it in seasons. Reassess this every month or in a couple weeks and see if you need to adjust anything. And it's okay to adjust as you go.
Yes, don't expect it to all be together at day one. So how do you communicate your needs at work? So this is something that I know gives a lot of people anxiety. If they have to have a conversation with a manager, with a leader, maybe they need to request working remote versus in person or hybrid. They need to set limits on the amount of hours they're working. They need to share that maybe they're struggling a little bit and they need to scale back. This is where I see a lot of people get kind of tripped up. There's a lot of anxiety about having these conversations, and then often just a simple, I don't really know how to start the conversation. So Alexa, with all of your insider knowledge of how leaders and managers think, if we have to say, come to our manager with a request for, let's just say to work remotely for a couple weeks when we go back to work, that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
How do you recommend starting that conversation, and what do you say to them?
Yeah, I always recommend positioning it as something that benefits the team and you. So kind of, salesy, like I would like the ability to work from home for a couple weeks. I'm gonna, track my work in ClickUp or XYZ or communicate this, but this way I can make sure that our team is able to get our amount of work done and reach our OKRs, and I'm able to be most effective while still managing caring for my baby at the same time or whatever it is. And so approach it with that salesy mindset of how can I make this position, how can I position this as a benefit for the team and my manager and me? And they're more likely to say yes rather than just a request of can I work from home for a few weeks. And by all means, like use AI, use ChatGPT, use Claude, put in what your request is, what your specifics are, and practice saying it to your partner, to your husband, to your friend, to colleague. Like the more you can practice saying it, the easier it'll be having that conversation in real life. Because that's the biggest concern, is like, you've never said this out loud to your manager. You've never probably had to request something like this. And so it can feel weird and uncomfortable. But as long as you're positioning it as a reasonable request that still benefits the team and you and your manager, it's harder to say no to that reasonably. And then have a backup plan. What if he says no or she says no? And you're like, okay, well, can we come to a compromise of maybe a trial, testing this out for a few weeks, reassessing if it's working out for everybody, and go from there. Or maybe we try remote for a couple days a week so that I still can come in, a few days a week, and I'm hybrid, but I can be home because I need to be home for XYZ reason, right? And so have that flexibility of compromising and backup options, and worst case scenarios of, what if they say no? Okay, well, what do you do next? What's most important? Like, it's gonna plan for that scenario, because it'll make you more prepared for the conversation. Because a lot of the anxiety is the what ifs. What if they say no? What if this goes wrong? So the better you can prepare, the easier it can be. And use ChatGPT, use AI. Like, it's gonna help you literally script out what you need to so that you feel better and just practice it.
Yeah. And just be really clear, really direct. Don't sugarcoat it. Be transparent and practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So just to kind of wrap up, I did want to touch on signs that you might really be struggling. We mentioned burnout earlier. There is a difference between finding the process of going back to work overwhelming and actually struggling with what might potentially be a mental health condition, anxiety, depression, etc. So some signs that might indicate that you could benefit from some more support would be if you're feeling detached from your baby or yourself, feeling a persistent worry, anxiety, having really racing thoughts, feeling sad or finding yourself crying for several weeks, a loss of interest in things you used to enjoy doing, rage, irritability, feeling emotionally out of control, difficulty sleeping even when the baby's sleeping, like feeling like you can't really calm down your mind, and isolating from loved ones. If you do find yourself struggling with any of these potential signs, it can never hurt to reach out. I always say it's never too early, never too late to reach out. You can talk to your OB or midwife, healthcare provider, let them know what you're experiencing, and they can potentially give you a screening tool. They can talk to you about referrals, about options. Getting connected with a therapist who understands what it's like to be a mother, to be a working mother, can be incredibly helpful. That's what we do at our practice, and all of our therapists really specialize in working with moms and working moms. Postpartum Support International is a great nonprofit organization that has dozens of free support groups online every week. They have a lot of resources. They have a directory of providers. They have a warm line that you can contact to get support. So I highly recommend them. And then joining a support group. And that can look like a Postpartum Support International support group. It could be a mom group, the Gymboree group. There are a lot of resources out there for moms, online, in person, meetups, just ways to get connected, to meet other people, and to know that you're not the only person that's feeling this and going through this. So to kind of close this out before we go to our Q&A, we would love to hear which part of this class hit closest to home for you. Was it initially building the plan, putting that in place, the structure, planning the healthier return, that gradual return, understanding what that identity shift, matrescence feels like, or redefining success for yourself? And then before we jump into Q&A, I just wanted to share something super exciting. So next Monday starts Maternal Mental Health Week. And Peanut, the Peanut app has started this new initiative to get the word matrescence added to the dictionary. So if you go to their website, there's actually a petition that you can sign to get matrescence added. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to type out matrescence on the computer or on your phone, But if you do, it thinks that it's not a word. So it'll on the computer come with a little red squiggle under it, trying to get you to change it, telling you it's spelled incorrectly. We just launched a page on our site. I'll share it in the chat as well. That will guide you to how to get that red squiggle off of your computer, how to get your phone to recognize matrescence as a real word. This is all part of this initiative to really recognize that motherhood is a profound transformation. It's a journey. And a huge part of that is getting this word out there, talking about it more, having conversations, and just sharing our experiences. So that's something that's very exciting. So please feel free if you would like to get matrescence added to your computer, your phone, please visit this page and it'll guide you through how to do that. And then just to turn to questions, any questions from you all for myself or for Alexa, any thoughts, comments? Alexa, I just can't see the questions when they come in. So if you see anything, please let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that Matrescence campaign. It's so like tired of waiting for the big companies to fix their shit. So we're just going to do it ourselves. I love it so much. Yeah, I don't know. No, it sounds like no one else has any questions. I feel like some of the hardest parts about motherhood is the finding other friend groups and finding it, because it is hard to put yourself out there and find other moms. But yeah, it kind of matters. And you don't know that you need it until you have it. Like I didn't have any postpartum new moms support group, and I felt super alone, like really alone. And now I have all these other mom friends of kids that go to the same daycare and other moms I meet at the park with the same age kids. And it's like, oh, this is awesome. I wish I had this earlier. Like this would have been great to talk about my postpartum hemorrhoids. So it's like, where was this when I needed it? So it's definitely, you don't know that you need it until you have it and you're like, this is great. So highly recommend it.
Because you think you're the only person that's going through it.
Yes. Hillary asked any good podcasts you recommend. I have a podcast called Between Meetings and Motherhood. If you want to listen to that, Spotify, YouTube. Motherkind is also a good podcast. They've got a good one off the top of my head. Emily, do you have any good podcast recommendations?
Oh, that's a good question. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But there are some that I'll listen to. Like, for example, that Ellen, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. Pompeo from On Call Her Daddy, where she talks. I love when there's like these little snippets on podcasts where someone's being really real and honest about their experience. And then you just feel so seen in that.
Yeah, I love it. Well, sounds like there's no other questions. Thank you everyone so much for joining. This has been amazing.
Thank you, Alexa, where everyone can find you. We have your contact info up.
Yes. I'm all over LinkedIn, just Alexa Starks, or Instagram, alexa.starks. And those are my websites, executivemoms.co and motheredmagazine.com, if you're interested.
And Phoenix Health, we're at joinphoenixhealth.com. We're an online mental health practice that specifically works with reproductive mental health, with mothers, with families navigating everything from infertility, loss, pregnancy, postpartum. And you can find us at joinphoenixhealth.com. Well, thank you so much, Alexa. Thank you all for joining, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.